They didn't applaud. I didn't get that kind of applause the last time I was on stage. So, I love interviewing you guys. I've never gotten through an interview with you without you telling me to fuck off.
Well, you always say something that deserves a good fuck off, like pretty early on.
I'm not going to do it. I said I wouldn't do it, but it's just my favorite movie that you've ever done, and in your early work.
Here it comes. Ready?
Look, Dude, Where's My Car was
Fuck
a great.
off, Mike.
But seriously, the whole 2.5 Men thing is. I was saying backstage that like anytime there's like laugh tracks being added to your work, it seems like you're not as. I mean, you're like the superstar, and you were explaining to me about what a live audience is, and that you enjoy the job. And
this is a live audience.
Yeah.
And when we shoot in front of a live audience, when they laugh, you can hear it on the film.
Yeah.
So when you say silly things in front of these guys and they laugh, the people will be able to hear it.
Yeah.
So when we shoot the show, it's the same thing.
Do they ever stop and then say, "Hey guys, you got to laugh more at this part"? Or?
No, but there's a stand-up comedian that keeps them laughing in between takes.
Okay.
So he just keeps, so people are just laughing at anything.
All right.
By the point in time we get out.
Yeah, and so who here
like
enjoys 2.5 Men?
Just like 4 people. Yeah. So, well, we're doing all right.
I want to jump right in because I've heard some rumors about you guys. So the two of you have been investing through A-Grade now for how long?
2.5
years.
2.5 years, and it's your money that you invest, right? You didn't take outside investors and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the two of us, and we have a third partner.
Yeah. So what I heard though is I actually heard that you guys are taking outside investors and sort of in your current sort of portfolio, and I hope you answer this, and also that the new investors going forward, and that you're raising money for it, and I heard you're raising it $100 million valuation. True? Not true?
Yeah, that's true.
True?
Yeah.
Oh, that was easy. Okay, so, Guy, do you also agree that it's true?
It's true, yeah. It's
okay. All right. So does this mean that you're sort of, is it you're bundling up your current investments into this new entity, or this is a new fund for new investments, or both?
So it's both. So we're bundling our current investments and then taking on new capital to invest in new investments with the same strategy. We just are somewhat formalizing what we've been doing, and going to continue to do similar.
And so you're raising $100 million, or you're raising money at $100 million valuation?
It's raising at $100 million valuation.
Okay. And how much are you raising?
Enough.
Enough. Okay. What are some of the investments that you guys have made? I know that you don't talk about all of them, but what are some of your favorites?
Spotify, Uber, Shazam, SoundCloud, Fab, Airbnb, the Rap Genius guys back here.
Yeah.
There's more.
There's a couple other. Yeah. Well, basically, what our focus has been is consumer-facing products, for the most part. Whether it's in the financial area, where it's like actually lubricating financial transactions, the social sharing economy. We have a pretty heavy portfolio in the social sharing economy. Because I think that the interconnectivity of the internet and social media platforms in general has now allowed for global communities to become local communities. Yeah. And when you have a local community making transactions, whether they're communication transactions, media transactions, or actual commerce transactions, becomes a lot easier. When I actually trust the guy on the other side of the transaction because I know him based on a social network. Yeah. So things like Airbnb and Getaround and Poshmark, companies like that you have a level of trust with someone based on your social connectivity. Yeah. We have a pretty heavy focus on that. And then service-based companies.
I'm sorry, the what based?
Service-based companies. So people who are really disrupting the service industry and taking something that used to take heavy research and a phone call and 3 references that now take 1 button to actually have a car show up. Or any of those type of service industries that are becoming these 1-button simplified transactions. Those kinds of companies, like Zarly, for example, is actually really moving into a service-based platform where you're 1 button away from a handyman, you're 1 button away from somebody that can bring food to your door. You're 1 button away from all these companies like that fit well into our strategy.
How did you guys meet, by the way? What brought you two together?
We actually met. We met through his ex-wife.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends. And we also work together. I have a management company, and Ashton is with the management company. And we were both doing tech investing on our own, separately.
Yeah.
And I had just come off of traveling for a year with Madonna on tour, and I wanted to do something.
I'm sorry, did you say you were traveling for a year with Madonna on tour?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually traveling with Madonna on tour as well last
see you.
year. And
He's been traveling with Madonna on tour for 10 years, Mike.
So I've been working with Madonna for 23 years. I'm her manager, and I came off tour, and I really wanted to do something exciting, and innovation was digital, online innovation. That's where I wanted to go, and so I started paying attention to. I gave everything else up. I didn't go sign new clients or do films.
You said Madonna, I can't do this anymore.
Well, we just got off tour, so it was okay.
All right.
Okay, so I went. I started looking for exciting companies to work on and help. And sort of, it's very similar to what I did at the record company. I had a record company called Maverick.
Yeah.
And a lot of the rock stars today are the engineers. And instead of looking for bands, I'm looking for smart engineers. I'm looking for guys, and then I do the same thing. I identify them, and then I help them get out to the marketplace, help market them, and so it's very, very similar in that way. And I really loved it. And as I was going in and out of Silicon Valley, there was only one other guy that I would see, or that was getting there before me. I would come in the door, and he was already coming out, and everyone's laughing, and everyone's having a good time, and then I'd have to come in and explain who I am and what I want to do. And it was Ashton. He was pretty much beating me at every stop, and he was getting into investing in Square early, and Flipboard and Foursquare, and he did Skype, and I was overly impressed and realized I could not ever beat this guy. So I called him up one day and with a really brilliant idea of us working together. And I said, we should just do this together. And he said yes, and that's how we started A-Grade.
What's the most frustrating thing about working with Ashton?
He wakes up looking like this.
Yeah.
So we go to, sometimes he books these like 7 a.m. meetings or 8 a.m. meetings, and I look like I just, you don't want me on your plane. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I look like I should be frisked and checked. And he looks like this in the morning, and I just don't get it.
It works for him. I imagine, and I know in the past that a lot of companies you invested in may have had a misconception that they were taking on this major celebrity as an investor, and that meant I don't know, all the things that go with connecting yourself with a celebrity. But that's never been how you guys do business. Are you still seeing a lot of that, or have you sort of people understand now that?
I think when we started, I mean, we had to earn our way. Right. We've, a lot of the founders, they know us now, but in the beginning, I think there was a stereotype to what we could bring to the table, and it was left in this one little box. And so I would say that 9 out of 10 times there was a lot of misconceptions in the beginning, and I think today it's 1 out of 10. I think people at this point, the founders we work with, have all spread the word that we're way more valuable than just the stereotype. Yeah.
Most of our deal flow comes from founders that we work with. Yeah. And we really, we look at what we bring to the table as something different than what most people bring to the table. If you're a company and you're coming up in Silicon Valley or New York or wherever it is, you're generally surrounded by a lot of people in the tech industry and a lot of people, and especially if you're trying to solve a problem in a specific space. You'll go and you'll find an investor that's strategic that's in the financial services space. You'll find an investor that's strategic in the automotive space or whatever space, whatever problem you might be solving. And I think we have a diverse sort of set of understanding of an entirely different industry. And it was funny, like when I was studying for the Steve Jobs movie, one of the things that really hit me that I heard him say, I think he was like 25 years old, and he was speaking to this group of high school kids that were all graduating and going to college. And apparently before he went on, the people were telling him about going to college and doing these things. And Steve Jobs gets up and he starts talking about how some of the most brilliant people he knows, some of the best people in business he knows never went to college.
Yeah.
They didn't do the sort of traditional route, but they went out and they had a unique set of experiences that they could bring to the table. And so he was encouraging these kids to go to Paris and write poetry for a year, or fall in love with 2 women at the same time, or try LSD. He was young then.
How many of those things have you done?
What's that?
How many of those things have you done?
What's that? But I think that our set of experiences in the entertainment industry are very different than what a lot of investors bring to the table. And I think as an entrepreneur, as you're building a company, you want to make yourself impenetrable to whatever industry may come or whatever problem may come, and you never know who that one great contact's going to be that's going to open the door. You never know what industry, what sector, what area, what thing, and you want to surround yourself with this surround sound that has as many experiences as you can possibly surround yourself with, so that you, as a founder, when you come against that obstacle, that maybe the difference between your company taking off or not, you have a resource. And we don't claim to know as much as a lot of people about building technologies, but what we do know is that we will work our asses off on behalf of the companies we invest in, and we will keep leaning and banging and banging and banging on whatever door they ask us to until one of those doors opens for them. And I think that it's a different asset that you can bring to an entrepreneur that a lot of people can't bring. And very different than, oh, I have a celebrity investor that I can now pimp my company with. Because it's not pimp my startup. And it took a while to get people to understand that it's not pimp my startup.
Ever. Sometimes
Except for when you're at TechCrunch Disrupt and you just start spewing off companies you work with. Or you put stickers on your laptop on 2.5 Men. A little bit of trouble for that one.
What kind of tech, and this doesn't have to be even in this, something that's really happening now, but what kind of tech would you like to see exist that it doesn't exist or is on the verge of existing, whether you'd invest or not?
One of the biggest things that we're focusing on now with our investments is intelligent objects. I think that the next wave of computing that seems to be happening is, there's a sensor or an operating system that's now associated with products, with actual objects. This chair is going to know who sat in it last, how long they sat in it, if it's open, if it's not, and the chair could be associated with the door, and you could have a carbon monoxide sensor inside of a water bottle. And as these sensors start to develop across these intelligent objects, we're going to start to understand the way that people work in an entirely different way, and we're going to start associating with objects in an entirely different way, and whether that's drones or robots or a chair. As they become more intelligent, I think that there's going to be an entire revolution of ideas that we can't even think about right now. I've seen some early stuff with certain sensors where you can actually think about having something happen and it happens virtually. You can think about turning the lights on and they turn on. And I've seen early prototypes of some of this stuff, and I think it's going to be really legitimate. I think stuff that's happening with Google Glass is extraordinary. Being able to leave virtual objects in places, I think is going to be, when Koala first started, before they sort of came up against the Foursquare bash, they were actually developing, what they were doing was leaving virtual objects in places. And then they sort of saw this move to, tagging, and mapping the insides of places with Foursquare, and they sort of match it out. But you sort of leapfrog to now, and you look at Google Glass, and you go, wait, Koala's idea becomes really, really relevant, right? I could leave jokes for my friends behind doors if I wanted to, or information about objects when I go on tour, or I go, on vacation and I'm looking at that church. I can know everything about it without having to open a pamphlet, And I think a lot of stuff like that is going to be innovative. I think decentralizing currencies, the Bitcoin revolution that's taking place, I think it's more than just Bitcoins. Right now it's Bitcoins, and I think Bitcoins obviously becoming more and more relevant. You know, there's the hacking volume. One of the things we look for in companies is a hacking volume. So the number of people that are trying to hack a solution to a problem. And the fact that people are hacking Bitcoin's really hard. It almost harkens back to like when banks first started and they didn't have safe safes and people were going into the banks and just robbing the money out of the safes. It actually validates the value of the money itself.
So the fact that Bitcoin has wild speculative, you know, changes in price and is constantly being hacked at every point of the network is a good thing.
I think the fact that you can buy drugs and ammo with it is actually a validator of the currency itself.
And you know my next question.
Well, but the bigger thing with Bitcoin is not just Bitcoin itself. But it's the bigger thing with Bitcoin is what does that decentralized technology really do, right? So the minute you can take, you know, right now everybody's worried about Big Brother on the internet, right? Like who's watching everything that I'm doing, and privacy is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. But imagine if we could decentralize that issue of security. And if we decentralize security in a way that we don't have to worry about Big Brother anymore, that could be a huge thing. Like the notion that we can actually civically monitor each other in an anonymous way actually keeps the anonymity of the internet. We don't have to worry about Big Brother. And that same actually infrastructure that built out Bitcoin could be used in the security industry for mass good. I mean, it's like, it's the old sort of, if everybody had a dart gun and we drove around and as we drove in our cars, we saw an asshole driving, we could shoot a dart at the asshole. You'd find out really quick who the assholes were because they'd have 100 darts in their car. And if we can do that from a cybersecurity point of view, and we're all tracking the assholes, we're gonna have a massive asshole farm, and we'll be able to actually monitor each other and what's going on in a huge way. And you could do it through the same technology to build out Bitcoin.
I'm just imagining myself with a lot of darts on me, first of all, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But what companies in the distributed security space are you looking at? Have you made investments in this?
I haven't made investments in it because I don't think anyone's really doing it yet. I think the notion is there, and I think Bitcoin, in a way, proves it out. So it's a space that we're just now speculatively looking into because I think it can be hugely valuable. I mean, imagine like child pornography on the web. If there's a peer-to-peer monitoring system of sorts, anonymous, but you could actually flag it in a way, because I'm not going to go surf for it, so how am I going to go and surf for it and flag it? It's illegal to even have it on my computer. But if I can see if somebody else is looking at it, I can flag that individual, and over time, if they get flagged and flagged and flagged and flagged, at that point in time, you could gradually tick away at their anonymity and then ping them up into a system that could do something about it.
All right, cool. So and this is sort of a related question, but you know, in the past, Hollywood has often inspired Silicon Valley, you know, Star Trek stuff, you know, Minority Report, constantly mentioned, and others. Are you seeing, I mean, well, and I actually think I know the answer to this because we talked about it backstage, but is it reversing a little bit? I mean, can we sort of see Hollywood starting to take maybe more inspiration from Silicon Valley than the other way around?
Well, it depends what you're talking about it from a investment point of view.
Let me ask it a different way. Are we getting to the point in Silicon Valley where imagining something and creating it is almost happening at a faster pace than Hollywood imagining things as well? Sorry.
I think it's starting to. I think it's definitely starting to equalize. I mean, we still have flying cars, but people are still imagining it. Well, we sort of do, but not really. But I think the dialogue that used to happen was always, you know, I mean, I know like some of the research Steven Spielberg's done on some of his films, like he goes and he sits down in rooms and he's like, what's next? What can we expect? I want to make this accurate. I want to make AI look legitimate. Like, what are the things? But I think it's getting to the point where the innovations, you know, Moore's Law is actually getting to the point where it's like the things are being created as fast as they can be imagined. And really what's starting to happen is the Hollywood part of it is actually becoming a marketing system for something that might be out next year. Which I think that's pretty cool, and I imagine that innovation to even flip, where it's already created before we can even sort of imagine it into a film.
Guy, I'd love to, and we're running out of time, but I'd love to chat with you a little bit about music. You guys are investors in Spotify. You have a music background. You know, is Spotify going to make it? Is a different model going to make it? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, we're betting on Spotify to make it, and I think that the two most important features in music, and maybe in film as well, coming is streaming and curation.
Yeah.
People either know what they want, so they can stream it, or they need to be led and need curation.
Yep.
And you know, I'd always hoped and prayed that the labels would sit together and support one system instead of killing off all of these systems.
Yeah.
You know, fighting, oh, well, we have our version, you have your version, and they have their version, we own more of this. And if everyone just worked together and created one way that every one of our phones for nominal, for very little money, minimal money, is $5 a month or $10 a month, you can get all the music in the world and never have to think about that this isn't available, and that would be huge for
But that's
for
Spotify,
artists.
right?
At Spotify,
Yeah.
it's always stressful getting those agreements back and the amount of time it took to negotiate those deals, and it's just a lot of start and stops. And then they've got some momentum now, and we love them. And Daniel is really smart.
And people are making money. Artists are making money.
There is a misnomer that artists are not. They actually are. There's an issue with transparency and knowing what they're making. That's a whole other issue. But my hope is that the labels can get together, unify, and support one way, and maybe and help that through.
Yeah.
Because it's just
What's more likely, that happening or peace in the Middle East? If you were to say, like, the music companies like not being total dickholes forever, or peace in the Middle East, which is more likely?
I'm hopeful for both.
All right. So, if just last question, and then I'll let you guys go. Back to the new company. I actually didn't ask you. Is there a new name, or is the new company also called A-Grade, or?
Currently, it's
A-Grade.
A-Grade. It's our
A-Grade Holdings.
Okay. And if are you done raising, or are you willing to take new investors for that as well?
Well, we have our lead investor, and we're pretty well filled up from strategics. There are a couple strategics that we're still going to bring on, but we're almost there.
Okay. And you'll make an announcement when it's finalized, and
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions? I'm going to take your audience questions.